Analyzing the book Tao of Jeet, page number 59. I'm going to read a quote. If you have any reflection, please offer. If you have any questions, please ask. If you have nothing to say, remain silent. The athlete can accelerate his speed by learning proper awareness, attention focus, and suitable preparatory postures. The rate at which he can contract his muscles is an important aspect in his relative speed. Certain physical principles govern speed. Shortened radius for quicker action, longer arc for imparting greater momentum, centering weight for speed and rotation, and multiplying speed by sequential but concurrently overlapping movements. The question an individual athlete must answer is what kind of speed is most effective for his particular work method. Often it's not how fast it travels, but how soon it gets there that counts. Timing. Speed and timing are complementary, and speed in delivering a stroke will lose most of its effectiveness unless the stroke is properly timed. Reaction time. Reaction time is the time gap between a stimulus and the response. It may be more completely defined in two ways: the time that elapses from the occurrence of the stimulus or cue to act to the beginning of the muscle movement. The time from the occurrence of the stimulus to the completion of a simple muscular contraction. Both definitions include the time taken for perception. If the perception is a simple thing like hearing a gun or seeing a flag drop, the amount of possible improvement of perceptual speed is less. The techniques of preparatory movement can be improved so that the response time is shortened. The direction of one's attention awareness to the motor act can shorten the response time. The remaining factor under the second definition is that of muscle contraction speed.
I just have a kind of reflection as hearing so much of the science of this and the movement of the body. If your brain is not functioning somehow, so none of this is even possible.
If your brain?
Yeah, like everything that the body does is reactions from stimuli to the brain and then reactions. And so if you have like brain damage or something,
Yes.
I guess you wouldn't be able to do this.
Definitely.
And on that same thought, if you're distracted by fear or anger or other strong emotions, that may interfere with your perceptions and also your judgment. If you see the person as being too big or too scary or perhaps not worthy or whatever, life-threatening, so you should stay neutral, I suppose.
Definitely. You bring up the brain damage. People that get concussions from like football, boxing, wrestling, or whatever sport or activity damages the brain. So the more damaged the brain is, the less you'll be able to have that reaction and speed that people with healthy brains will have.
That's why they're always saying protect the head first.
Yes. I mean, when we work the wooden dummy, for example, we're conditioning our muscles to be strong to be able to sustain damage. But our brain is very fragile. You don't see us hitting our head against the wooden dummy repetitively, for example. You gotta protect your brain, but your muscles can get stronger, your bones can get stronger, but your brain has to be protected, and all this training is designed to protect you, your vitals, from that damage. Total reaction consists of 3 elements: the time required for the stimulus to reach the receivers, audio, visual, tactile, etc., plus the time required for the brain to relay the impulse through the proper nerve fibers to the proper muscles, plus the time required for the muscles to get into action after receiving the impulse. Reaction time becomes longer under the following conditions: not trained in any type of system, tiredness, absent-mindedness, emotionally upset, anger, fear, etc. That's what Gary brought up. So get rid of anger and fear, emotionally upset, meditation helps with that. Absent-mindedness, meditation helps with that. Tiredness, just got to get your sleep, get good nutrition, exercise to get some energy. Not trained in any type of system, well, we're training in something now, so that should increase your reaction time. Opponent's reaction time is lengthened immediately after the completion of a technique. When his stimuli are combined, when he is inhaling, when he withdraws his energy, involves attitude, when his attention is sight or misdirected, generally when he is physically or mentally off balance. So just think about that when you're sparring. After they complete the technique, they're vulnerable. That's why I keep telling you guys to get back to the ready stance after every after every technique and be ready. When you see us breathing, and when you're breathing hard, when you're getting tired, they can hear you breathing. You'll be like, they can time it, and then when they feel that when they see that you're inhaling, that's when they can attack you, and then your reaction time will be lengthened. Warming up, physiological condition, and degree of motivation all affect general reaction time. Movement time. Movement time may be compared to fencing time. A period of fencing time, temps de escrime, is the time taken by a fencer to perform one simple fencing movement. Such simple fencing action may be a single arm movement or a step forward. The time taken to make a simple movement will vary according to the speed of the individual fighter. Making an unexpected attack or the removal of the blade as the opponent is about to engage it are examples of actions executed in time. It is not necessary to execute an action in time with a quick or violent motion. A movement that starts from rest without obvious preparation and proceeds smoothly without hesitation may be so unexpected that it succeeds in hitting the opponent before he is alerted.
Question. Is that referring to like telegraphing? Or is that something?
Yeah, like if you don't
Like
telegraph.
don't telegraph.
Yeah. Don't telegraph, don't hesitate. Cause the opponent to lose a movement time by jamming him to disturb his rhythm, by checking and controlling him, immobilization, by drawing a preliminary reaction from him in the first half of your attack, by deflecting his movement and scoring. An action, although technically perfect, can be frustrated by the opponent's preventive hits. Therefore, it is absolutely essential to time the attack at exactly the right moment, psychologically or physically, when the opponent cannot avoid being hit. Thus, timing means the ability to recognize the right moment and seize the opportunity for an action. Timing can be analyzed through its physical, psychological, and physiological and psychological aspects. A hit may be made as the opponent is preparing or planning to move. A hit may land when the opponent is in the midst of a movement. A hit may land in the fluctuating cyclic events of tension. A hit may be made when the opponent is not paying attention, when his concentration flags.
That all sounds like to me the kind of like the basis for his style, the whole art of interception. Between movements and the process of the movement. A couple other things to say. That's just what it sounds like, I'm not sure.
Yes.
And I'm noticing that he's taking advantage of opportunities of the person not being prepared.
Yes.
So he's not waiting for the moment to show, okay, now we're ready. He's doing the exact opposite. It's like timing in between.
Yeah. This perfect moment may be either seized instinctively or provoked consciously. A good fighter must sense rather than perceive his chance to strike. So you read them rather than you read them before you even see it.
Yeah. Think of football again, like a good defensive back, that's what he's doing. He's kind of anticipating, reading the quarterback, reading the receiver, and almost anticipating the move to get the pick.
Yes. Timing exercises. Practice keeping the proper distance. Attack when your partner changes position or is retracting his weapon. Practice evasive thrust. A simple attack in time against the opponent's attempt at engagement. Evasive thrust must be practiced against the simple, semicircular, and circular engagement. Aim at quick hitting and do not sacrifice speed for power. A terrific kick and a powerful punch depend on two things: leverage, timing. Timing is an integral part of leverage, but the reverse is not the case. One does not need strength or weight to hit hard. Timing a blow is the secret of powerful hitting. I think that's a difficult thing because he's talking about, a terrific kick and a powerful punch depend on two things: leverage and timing. So you can't really demonstrate how good you are, with what you're doing unless you're actually engaged with somebody. And the person that you're engaged with also has to, in a way, be relatively trained and proficient himself in order for people to recognize your ability and being able to pretty much beat him to the punch or the kick or whatever technique. Yes. When you back?
Monday.
Monday? Alright. Morning or night?
I'm probably not.
Sorry, Gary.
Timing one's blows in boxing means the art of hitting the rival as he comes forward or perhaps is lured into coming forward. The good fighter seems to outguess his adversary and, whenever possible, takes the initiative and influences the reaction of his opponent. Then his actions are carried out purposefully and without hesitation. This requires confidence, and no one, repeat, no one, can be a really heavy hitter through perfect timing unless he has complete faith in his own ability. Broken rhythm. Ordinarily, two fighters of equal ability can follow each other's movements, and unless there is a considerable difference in speed, they are very likely to stalemate each other. The movements of attacking and defending work almost in rhythm with each other. They have a sequential relationship which makes the proper timing of each movement dependent on the previous movement. Although there is a slight advantage in the initiative of the attack, it must also be backed by superior speed in order to land successfully. However, when the rhythm is broken, speed is no longer the primary element in the success of the attack or counterattack of the man who has broken the rhythm. If the rhythm has been well established, there is a tendency to continue in the sequence of the movement. In other words, each man is motor set to continue the sequence. The man who can break this rhythm by light hesitation or unexpected movement can now score an attack or counterattack with only moderate speed. His opponent is motor set to continue with the previous rhythm, and therefore he can adjust himself to the change. He has been hit. That is why the stroke on time is usually a pretty stroke, or it seems to catch its victims flat-footed. Timing has to be felt and mastered as a psychological problem, even more than as a fighting problem, for the breaking of the rhythm relies on the fact that the victim is going to continue for a fraction of a second in a sequence of movements which has suddenly been interrupted. Sometimes timing involves attacking with many threatening movement feints. If the defender accepts this rhythm and attempts to parry these various threats, then a slight hesitation will break the rhythm and provide the opportune moment to launch the final attack. On other occasions, when your opponent is in the midst of making advances or threatening movements on his own account, you may succeed in breaking the rhythm by first apparently reacting as he expects and then suddenly launching a counterattack when he thinks you should be following his feint. You should land, for he is motor set to continue with his threats and cannot adjust himself to the necessity of parrying until after you have scored. In general, timing here means that you initiate your attack or movement when your opponent has started preparation of an attack. Thus, timing becomes a question of taking advantage of the slight interval before he can readjust himself to make a parry. Half and a half beat. An attack performed halfway through the opponent's movement is said to occur on the half beat. When the fighter lulls his opponent's rhythm by inducing and performing one full count movement, he may then break the trance by striking on the half beat. This broken rhythm method will often catch the opponent mentally and physically off balance for defense.
Makes me think about drumming. You have a steady rhythm, which can be predictable, but when you throw something on an off rhythm, you can go. Just even a half beat or a half tick off is going to change the whole. It's in the same count, but it's a different. No.
Chris, can you block it real quick? Cadence. Speed regulated to coincide with the adversaries is known as cadence. It is the specific rhythm at which a succession of movements is executed. A correctly judged cadence permits the calm control of every stroke. This control will allow the fighter to select with more ease the movements of offense and defense which will bring about a hit.
It's rhythm again.
Remember that to land a hit, the defense has to be avoided. Excessive speed can catch up with the opponent's parries. The attacker is then known as having parried himself.
It's a parry.
A parry is like a redirection. It's like a block, but you redirect it. So you know how like when they're punching at you and you go like this, a palm block, and then it redirects it? That's a parry. Ideally, a fighter should seek to impose his cadence on an opponent. This may be achieved by intentionally varying the cadence of his own movements. For example, he can deliberately establish a certain rhythm in his feints in a composite attack until the defender is induced to follow that cadence. By obtaining an edge of speed on the adversary, the fighter may lead him. In other words, it is the adversary who continually will have to try to catch up. If one has a sufficient margin of speed on hand, it is possible to maintain this advantage. To do so must have a moral effect on the opponent who, finding himself subjected to his adversary's will in this important factor of speed, cannot fail to suffer in his confidence. The preparation by a series of false attacks or feints, executed at a normal rhythm, has the effect of lulling the opponent into a false sense of preparedness. It accustoms his reactions to a cadence other than that which will be used for the attack itself. Then the movements comprising the final attack are suddenly accelerated and more likely to find him lagging behind. A very effective change of cadence is to slow down instead of speed up the final action of a compound attack or riposte. This slowing of cadence can be pictured as a strike whose delivery is begun, halted in its path forward, and continued when the adversary leaves the threatened line for another in the hope of finding the hand. Speed applied at the opportune moment, together with the correctly judged cadence in the execution of the movement, will go a long way toward ensuring the success of a stroke. Speed applied at the opportune moment, together with the correctly judged cadence in the execution of the movement, will go a long way toward ensuring the success of a stroke. Tempo. The success of a movement, defensive or offensive, depends on whether we perform it at the right time or not. We must surprise our opponent and catch the moment of his helplessness. That little fragment of time, one beat in a cadence, which is the most suitable to accomplish effective action, is called tempo.
Tempo or tempo?
Tempo.
Tempo.
T-E-M-P-O.
Or tempo. It's just a trick area. Now just this whole rhythmic kind of feel to what he's saying, talking about cadence, tempo, timing. Said he was a good drummer too.
That little fragment time, from a psychological point of view, the moment of surprise, and from the physical point of view, the moment of helplessness, are the right moments to attack. This is the true conception of tempo, choosing the exact psychological and physical moment of weakness in an opponent. There are also tempo opportunities when the opponent makes conscious movement. That is, when he steps forward, makes an invitation, goes into a bind, etc. In such and similar cases, the moment for attack is when he has executed the movement, because until he finishes it, he cannot change to the reverse. Every action at the peak of the art of fighting is tempo. But be careful that the adversary does not mislead you by giving false tempo opportunities.
I got a question. I hear it and it all makes sense and it's deep. It's really interesting. I guess I'm just wondering from how do you, some of this stuff, I don't know, how do you maybe this is a question for you, how would you teach something like tempo? And then how do you, is there some kind of sequence to improving, sparring to all these different components? Do you just kind of get in there and figure them out as you go? Is there some way you can work on something like tempo or cadence? It's a little overwhelming when you hear it all like this. But I know all this stuff kind of happens instantaneously when you're sparring, so it's not like you're thinking about it per se.
When I'm reading it, I'm constantly visualizing, like when I'm sparring, and what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So you need to this will take years,
Right.
and years of sparring, and then you visualize, and you can see exactly what he's talking about through those experiences. But if you haven't sparred yourself, it's gonna be really hard to understand these, and it's very deep, but it's something that you have to get engaged into doing in order to know. So even Bruce, there's a quote that he says, practicing forms and all that stuff is like swimming on land. So he's saying, in order to know how to fight, you have to spar. So then that's like actual swimming.
Right.
So when you're sparring, you'll be able to know what he's talking about. So, for example, he says, the other part, he said, there are also temple opportunities when an opponent makes conscious movement, that is, when he steps forward, makes an invitation, goes into bind. In such and similar cases, the moment for attack is when he has executed the movement, because until he finishes it, he cannot change to the reverse. So, I'm envisioning right there, when somebody's stepping forward, that's why I tell you guys don't hop, because when you hop, that you're not contacted to the ground. So, say you jump up, and then you're in the air. Like when you're in the air, you're not grounded, so you don't really have the ability to deliver much force at that moment. So if you're hopping, and I'm timing my counter, and then I basically punch at the moment of when you hop towards me, that's what he's talking about. So he's saying, when you step forward, even if you don't hop, just stepping forward, if the person times his counter when you step forward, you can't reverse the step. Like once you've begun the step forward,
Oh, you gotta complete it.
yeah, you have to complete it.
Right.
Like you can't go reverse. So it's like you're in the car, you put it in drive. You can't go to drive and then all of a sudden reverse without stopping.
Right.
Like you have to, once you're driving, you're on the gas, you're actually moving forward. You can't just all of a sudden just go backwards.
Right.
So as soon as you step forward, that's when you hit. So a lot of this stuff I'm envisioning, like when I just sparred, like I just sparred with Davin, I'm envisioning all the stuff that happened when we sparred, and then I can understand what he's talking about. But if you don't spar, there's nothing to this. It's not that there's nothing to envision, but you could even like watch Bruce Lee's movies and then you could see what he's talking about by him demonstrating it, or you could even see Muhammad Ali doing it, and then you could kind of see what he's talking about. But there's still a difference between you actually doing it,
Right.
you know. And then you can also analyze other students in here and see what they're doing and see what he's talking about. But it's either you spar a lot or you gotta watch a lot of other people spar and you gotta see these little intricacies. But you might mentally understand it, but it doesn't mean you can execute it.
Right.
You know, because executing it takes like an immense amount of practice. And that's what I'm talking about. This is difficult because if you can't find worthy sparring partners, how are you supposed to practice all this stuff?
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just really difficult because he's talking about all this stuff, and then it's just when he's getting in this part of the book, I could see why people could think that Jeet Kune Do is just all about fighting, because he's just talking about all this stuff that's all sparring, you know.
Yeah.
But he did talk a lot about philosophy beforehand. But he did die earlier. You know, he did die early, and he didn't really put everything together. But it's a shame that there's not that many. I mean, I don't know. We didn't finish the book, but I think the rest of the book is pretty much talking about sparring.
Yeah.
But it's a shame that he didn't, you know, have an opportunity to talk about other ways of development that's not just about sparring, because it's not easy to find people to practice this stuff with.
Yeah.
And even so, when you get good, how are you supposed to demonstrate that you actually are good at it when you always need like another person to kind of show that you got, you know, that you can fake people out really well? And how do you know it's not choreographed?
Yeah.
It's just it's very complex. But if you get strong, you can just show that you're strong or whatever. But this stuff, it's not just about speed. So he's not talking about, okay, just because you're fast, it still doesn't mean anything if you don't got timing and tempo and rhythm and all this other stuff. But then you demonstrate it with somebody. How do you know it's not choreographed? Like, how do you know he actually went for the fake and that you didn't tell, you know, that it's all just a staged preparation?
Yeah, when I listen to it, I don't think of it as just about sparring. To me, it's more like there's philosophy and science of movement applied to sparring. So when I'm listening to it, I'm kind of listening to it from a movement, so I can make sense of it in that way. But then, yeah, applying it to the sparring, and that's where I see more experience. So I can think about it in terms of drumming, I can think about it in terms of football, bouncing, all kinds of things that have to do with athleticism or movement, control of the body, just the body. But then, yeah, specific to sparring, that's where like, just lacking a bit. But I can get it, it makes sense, but yeah, I see, you have to learn from experience. I actually have to stop now.
Okay.
Get to another meeting.
Okay. When you back?
I'll be back tomorrow. All right.
Chris, what do you want to focus on today?